Today we're going to talk about the price action that we have been seeing in Bitcoin and a number of other cryptocurrencies over the past couple of days, and my thoughts on Bitcoin as well as altcoins moving forward in this particular market. So, my thoughts on Bitcoin really haven't changed from when I made that video last week where I talked about Bitcoin moving into the next bull stretch. I said that we should expect to see a little bit of a correction first, somewhere in, well, actually no, technically it would be a dip. I defined a dip as 15%, a correction as 30%, and a bear market as 60%. I suspected that we would have to see a dip before we started to see Bitcoin go back up. Now, what I didn't anticipate was a full-out war between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. When I made the prediction for Bitcoin to go down to $6,500, that was with the assumption that it was just as a result of Bitcoin getting overextended, as you can see here. I felt that Bitcoin went up far too quickly without any dips. If you go over this past, roughly 2-month period or so, there was only 1 or 2 dips in the whole time. That is 15% drawdowns from recent tops. And as a result of that, I felt that Bitcoin was far overextended and that it needed to at least see a 15% correction. Now, what we got was actually a little bit more substantial. And the reason we had a more substantial correction was the result of Bitcoin Cash. There was a lot of concern over the cashioning. Unless you've been sleeping under a rock over the past couple of days, or I guess technically the term is living under a rock over the past couple of days, then you know about Bitcoin Cash. You know about the fact that it had this huge spike up while Bitcoin was going down. And at their lowest point, Bitcoin was $5,400, and Bitcoin Cash at its highest point was $2,700. So it was approximately half of a Bitcoin, which is the closest that any cryptocurrency has gotten to taking over Bitcoin since Ethereum back in June, I believe it was. So this was a fairly monumental event, especially when you consider the fact that the flippening with Ethereum was not going to straight up replace Bitcoin. However, Bitcoin Cash was with the assumption that if it took over Bitcoin, it actually would have been rebranded as Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin itself would likely crash downward, and we would be in a bear market for Bitcoin and a bull market for, well, actually, no, we would still be in a bull market for Bitcoin. It's just that Bitcoin would now be what we consider Bitcoin Cash. So anyway, I did not anticipate that happening, and even with it happening, Bitcoin still held in very strong. I mean, it went down to $5,500. I hope you guys had some limit orders set in there, because I had some limit orders set in to purchase starting at $6,500, and I also had another limit order in at $5,500, and I had a third limit order in at $4,000. I have removed the limit order at $4,000 at this point. It's not going to happen, at least not in my opinion, because we just got tested with one of the most scariest events with Bitcoin in quite some time, and despite that scary event, Bitcoin only went down to $5,500, which in my opinion is remarkable. I am very happy that I bought some at that level. Of course, I wish I bought all of it at that level, but I had decided a while ago that I was going to purchase starting at $6,500, so my average buy price right now is slightly overcut $6,000. And I'm very happy with that position. I actually still think that Bitcoin is a buy, even at these levels, although personally I prefer, it's tougher for me to say buy right now. I prefer it at like 6,500 to 6,600 or so. However, I'm not going to recommend that you wait until then, because I think Bitcoin is going to continue going upward in the short term here, and even the medium term I think is looking really good. But if we go till the end of the year, I think we're going to see a really strong bullish stretch for Bitcoin. Now, as to whether or not that extends into the new year, I'm not really sure. Again, I'm because of the way that this market works, it's very short-term oriented, so I'm going to stick with that when it comes to my thoughts moving into the future. But when we think about the short term here, I'm really bullish on it. I actually think that we're going to head back above $7,000 soon. I don't know if it's going to happen over the next week or so, but certainly by the time we get to the launch of CME futures in the second week of December, we should start seeing some really bullish activity in cryptocurrencies as institutional investors gain more exposure. It does give them the ability to more easily short Bitcoin, which of course is a negative of it. However, any exposure to Bitcoin on institutional investors is going to increase the capital inflows into this particular market, which is a bullish sign. So even though it's going to give them the ability to short Bitcoin or bet against Bitcoin, I'm still bullish on Bitcoin, at least moving into the end of the year. So those are my thoughts on Bitcoin. I still stay with what I said in my previous video where I said we're probably going to see another bull stretch with Bitcoin. I hope you purchased Bitcoin when it was doing this little correction here, because I really, I do think that Bitcoin might be a little bit overextended if we think about it over the medium term. But in the short term here, now that we just basically conquered Bitcoin Cash takeover, we might see more attempts at it, but because this first attempt failed, people are going to start seeing that a lot of it does come from FOMO activity, and as a result of that, I suspect any further attempts by Bitcoin Cash to take over Bitcoin are going to be met with a fair amount of resistance, at least after, maybe we break through that 2,600, 2,700 level that Bitcoin Cash stopped at, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Bitcoin Cash basically not ever be able to come as close as it did this weekend at taking over Bitcoin. Again, it depends really on how much influence and how much capital gets pushed into it, and really the communication on the behalf of Core as it relates to scaling, because that's clearly what's fueling this debate, on-chain scaling versus off-chain scaling. We're going to talk about that in a separate video at some point here, because it's becoming more and more important to understand as investors. However, at this point, I do want to say that I feel like Bitcoin is fairly safe from any event where we see Bitcoin Cash take over Bitcoin. I think that Bitcoin Cash had its moment this weekend. It may have another moment like that come into the future, and people won't want to miss the train, so they'll pump money into it, but I still don't think it's going to be enough to take over Bitcoin. So there you go. Those are my main thoughts on Bitcoin. The most time spent on that particular cryptocurrency, just because, of course, it is the king, and people generally are most curious about what's going to happen next with Bitcoin. Moving into some of the other major cryptocurrencies, we have Ethereum here, which recently had a nice little run up over the past, let's see here, let's go to the 1 hour candles. That'll probably show it the best. So Ethereum had a nice little pump here. It's basically gone up roughly 10% over the past day or so. I'm still going to continue holding in Ethereum. I don't have any intention, I've said this in a previous video, I have no intention of selling Ethereum at any level below $400. I think it's going to break through that resistance level at some point here, and if it does break out to the upside, we could see $500 just as easily. So I'm going to hold in Ethereum. It has more transactions than Bitcoin, cheaper transactions, it has more use cases than Bitcoin. I don't think it should be worth more than Bitcoin as a result of all of that, simply because of the fact that the institutional support is going to be there for Bitcoin. Don't get me wrong, there is institutional support for Ethereum as well, but nowhere near as much. But I do think that Ethereum is a great place to be when we see all of these debates surrounding Bitcoin scalability. Because if we see another situation with Bitcoin where another hard fork gets announced, or there's another schism in the community, or what have you, I think Ethereum is always going to be the #1 place that capital flees to when we start seeing events of this nature, because of course people are going to start thinking about basically where's the best place for me to go. And I think Ethereum, because it's the second largest cryptocurrency, and also because it has all the support that it does by its community, and because it has all the transactions that it does, and this and that, essentially people will move over to Ethereum. This run up in Ethereum is sort of what I expected around the SegWit 2x hard fork. I'm a little surprised to see it happen actually quite a bit later than that. But we did see a run up right before, basically right around that time where SegWit 2x got canceled. And again, the question really becomes, moving forward, am I bullish or bearish? Real simple, I'm bullish on Ethereum. I like Ethereum quite a bit. I don't know if I would buy at this particular level, not because I don't think it's going to go up a lot, but because Ethereum, unless it's able to break above, $350 or so, it seems to always bounce back to that $300 level. So you might want to hold off. I'm not going to make any strong conviction plays on that because I don't have to think about it a lot because I've already fully scaled into Ethereum. If it goes below $300, I think it's a buy at any level under 300. So there you go. In terms of Litecoin, you guys know that I continue to watch Litecoin just because it's a cryptocurrency I like quite a bit. However, now that I have a position in Bitcoin, I'm not looking at Litecoin as much as I used to because there's such a high correlation between Bitcoin and Litecoin. And because Litecoin tends to trade in these huge consolidation ranges until it finally breaks out, I'm going to stay on the sidelines with Litecoin for now. However, if I do see it go below roughly $50, I know that's quite a bit down from where it currently is. The reason why I don't want to buy Litecoin until it goes down by that much is not because that's the fair value for Litecoin, but simply because it's a cryptocurrency that just doesn't get a ton of momentum. It's a fairly stable cryptocurrency relative to all the other ones. So it's one of those ones that you have to buy based off of value. Otherwise, you're just not going to get the returns that you do in other cryptocurrencies. However, I do think that it's a much safer alternative to a lot of other cryptocurrencies. I think you're going to see much lower volatility with Litecoin, and I think in the long term we are going to see Litecoin appreciate greatly relative to Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. I just don't think that time is right now. However, I do want to say that when Litecoin tends to break out, it really does break out. And so if we see Litecoin start going above, say, $75, I'll probably buy Litecoin on the upside, because when Litecoin breaks out, it really does break out. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Litecoin challenge that $100 level again like it did at the beginning of September, if I'm recalling correctly. Now, in terms of the rest of the cryptocurrency market, I know some of you have been asking me to talk about Dash. I'm actually not against Dash as much as many other people are, because a lot of people say they have a master key and it's shady and pre-mined and this and that, and I totally understand that. And for that reason, I actually do recommend people stay away from it, even if it's not true, because the perception from the community is that it is true. It does kind of hold down Dash a little bit. But the real reason is that I'm staying away from Dash at the moment is because it has the same valuation as Litecoin at the moment, yet it handles way less transactions than Litecoin does, even if you consider this recent increase. Now, of course, they are doing more and more updates. I believe it's called Evolution, where their motto is it'd be so easy that your grandma could use it, and they're going to reduce the transaction fees. They're going to increase the block sizes. They're going to do a ton of different things that is going to improve the Dash network. And of course, they have that treasury, which the more valuable the cryptocurrency becomes, the more that they have to allocate out to marketing and other projects that improve the Dash network. It's a very interesting project in the sense that it sort of behaves differently from all these other cryptocurrencies in that it is a DAO. And DAOs, in my opinion, are very interesting to analyze. My main issue with it is that I've looked at the treasury before. I'm just giving one example here, and I don't want to be too specific with it because I don't want to bring the person down at all. But I saw a project that got allocated roughly $1,000 that got exposure to Dash on YouTube for like 50 views. That's it. And, $1,000 for 50 views on YouTube, and it wasn't even that professionally done or anything. People are very enthusiastic about Dash, but because the masternodes that vote within the network aren't necessarily, I hate to say it, but may not necessarily be the most intelligent people for making decisions on what's best for Dash, they allocate the funds in the treasury a little bit too liberally. And as a result of that, we see projects funded with the treasury that literally destroy value. I mean, they actually destroy value in terms of how much gets spent in Dash versus what you actually get out of it. And so I just want to point out here that while it is very interesting, the infrastructure that Dash has, of course, the other thing I'm not mentioning here is that it does have somewhat of a dark history, which is another thing that sort of holds it down. Yet, Bitcoin also had a dark history. So I don't really care about that as much. It's more that you don't have that community support the way you do with all of these other cryptocurrencies for the most part. You also have a situation where essentially they are allocating capital in a way that doesn't make sense because they are a DAO rather than a centralized team. The concept of having a decentralized organization is really cool, right? However, in the end, in my opinion, it actually works out to be basically a mess. It's chaotic and it's not efficient at all. I mean, they do have officials that kind of help run Dash. However, I think in general here, when I think about how I've seen the treasury run, in my opinion, it just wastes far too many funds. So those are my opinions on Dash. I actually have invested in Dash multiple times in the past. However, I think it's overvalued at the moment. I don't think it should be challenging Litecoin at this valuation when you consider the difference in the number of transactions, and also when you consider the fact that Litecoin has far more community support and also in general has been, I would say, a much more stable cryptocurrency throughout the years. So just wanted to talk about that real quickly because Dash had a huge run up, mostly as the result of the fact that they're going to be scaling up the network and it's kind of shining while Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash were having their little war between each other. You guys know I like Monero. As usual, it's considered the #1 anonymous coin. Even if that's not true to you, even if you believe that some other cryptocurrency is the #1 privacy coin, it doesn't matter because Monero has all the community support, and I know for a fact that it is a good, I should say great, privacy coin. So even if there is one out there that's slightly better than it or implements a certain feature better than it, Monero at some point will catch up. That's sort of their thing. The only thing I would say with Monero is if you are somebody that has an issue with ethically investing in a cryptocurrency that might be used for illicit purposes, then of course, that's up to you. I know a lot of people don't care about that. Some people do. I'm not going to get into it too much, but just realize that the main reason that Monero exists is to protect privacy. It's not so you can partake in illegal activity, even if that ends up being the use case. And that's the same thing that plagued Bitcoin in its early years, and we have seen the number of illegal transactions conducted with Bitcoin decrease drastically. Anyway, I'm going to leave this video there for the most part. In terms of altcoins, I still think that we're going to see a fairly good bull stretch in all of them for the most part. We're starting to see them slowly catch up with what their Bitcoin levels were prior to the big run-up in Bitcoin over the past, I think now it's like 2 months or so, maybe a month and a half or so that we've seen Bitcoin really run up. I think we're just going to enter the next bull stretch similar to what we saw in August. So I'm still standing by what I said in my previous video about the next bull stretch. As usual, I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you would like to support me, check the description for some affiliate links for Amazon. I have linked some of my favorite hardware wallets as well as my favorite book for cryptocurrencies. And even if you click one of those links and make any order in the next 24 hours on Amazon, even if it's not for one of those links, I receive a small referral fee for getting you on Amazon in the first place. So check those out if you're interested. Otherwise, leave a like, comment, and subscription, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you for watching.